Order. We now must come to the statement. Secretary of State for Works and Pensions, Liz Kendall.
Mr. Speaker, this government is ambitious for our people and our country, and we believe that unleashing the talents of the British people is the key to our future success. But the social security system we inherited from the Conservatives is failing the very people it is supposed to help and holding our country back. The facts speak for themselves. 1 in 10 people of working age now claiming a sickness or disability benefit. Almost 1 million young people not in education, employment or training. That's 1 in 8 of all our young people. 2.8 million out of work due to long-term sickness. And the number of people claiming personal independence payments set to double this decade from 2 to 4.3 million, with the growth in claims rising faster among young people and mental health conditions, and with claims up to 4 times higher in parts of the Midlands, Wales and the North, where economic demand is weakest. Places that were decimated in the 80s and 90s, written off for years by successive Tory governments and never given the chances they deserve. And the consequences of this failure are there for all to see. Millions of people who could work, trapped on benefits, denied the income, hope, dignity and self-respect that we know good work brings. And taxpayers paying millions more on the costs of failure, with spending on working age sickness and disability benefits up 20 billion since the pandemic, set to rise by a further 18 billion by the end of this Parliament to £70 billion a year. And it is not like this in most other comparable countries, where spending on these benefits since the pandemic is either stable or falling, whilst ours continues to inexorably rise. This is the legacy of 14 years of Tory failure. And today, Mr. Speaker, we say no more. Since we were elected, we have hit the ground running to get more people into good work through our plan for change. We're investing an extra £26 billion into the NHS to drive down waiting lists and get people back to health and back to work. We're improving the quality of work and making work pay with our landmark employment rights legislation and increases in the national living wage. We're creating more good jobs in every part of the country, in clean energy and through our modern industrial strategy. And we are introducing the biggest reforms to employment support in a generation with our £240 million Get Britain Working plan. Today, our Pathways to Work Green Paper sets out decisive action to fix the broken benefits system, creating a more proactive, pro-work system for those who can work, and so we protect it for those who cannot work now and for the long term. Mr. Speaker, I know as a constituency MP for 14 years that there will always be people who can never work because of the severity of their disability or illness. Under this government, the social security system will always be there for people in genuine need. That is a principle we will never compromise on. But disabled people and people with health conditions who can work should have the same rights, choices and chances to work as everybody else. That principle of equality is vital too, because far from what members opposite would have you believe, many sick and disabled people want to work with the right help and support. And unlike the Conservatives, that is what we will deliver. Mr. Speaker, our first aim is to secure a decisive shift towards prevention and early intervention. Almost 4 million people are in work with a work-limiting health condition, and around 300,000 fall out of work every year. So we've got to do far more to help people stay in work and get back to work quickly, because your chances of returning are 5 times higher in the first year. Our plans to give statutory sick pay for 1 million of the lowest paid workers and more rights to flexible working will help keep more people in work. The Workwell programme is trialling new approaches, like GPs referring people to employment advisors instead of signing them off sick. And our Keep Britain Working review, led by former John Lewis boss Sir Charlie Mayfield, will set out what government and employers can do together to create healthier, more inclusive workplaces. So we help more employers offer opportunities for disabled people, including through measures like reasonable adjustments, alongside our Green Paper consultation on reforming access to work so it is fit for the future. And today, I can announce another step. Our Green Paper will consult on a major reform of contributory benefits, merging contributions-based job seekers allowance and employment support allowance into a new time-limited unemployment insurance paid at a higher rate without having to prove you cannot work in order to get it. So if you have paid into the system, you'll get stronger income protection while we help you get back on track. Yeah. Our second objective is to restore trust and fairness in the benefits system by fixing the broken assessment process and tackling the perverse incentives that drive people into welfare dependency. Now, members on this side of the House have long argued that the work capability assessment is not fit for purpose. Going through the WCA is complex, time-consuming and often stressful for claimants, especially if they also have to go through the PIP assessment. And more fundamentally, it's based on a binary can-can't work divide, when we know the truth is that many people's physical and mental health conditions fluctuate. The consultation on the Conservatives' discredited WCA proposals was ruled unlawful by the courts. So today I can announce we will not go ahead with their proposals. Instead, we will scrap the WCA in 2028. In future, extra financial support for health conditions in universal credit will be available solely through the PIP assessment. So extra income is based on the impact of someone's health condition or disability, not on their capacity to work, reducing the number of assessments that people have to go through and a vital step towards de-risking work. And, Mr. Speaker, we will do more by legislating for a right to try, guaranteeing that work in and of itself will never lead to a benefit reassessment, giving people the confidence to take the plunge and try work without the fear this will put their benefits at risk. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, we will also tackle the perverse financial incentives that the party opposite created, which actively encourage people into welfare dependency. Yeah. The Tories ran down the value of the Universal Credit Standard Allowance. As a result, the health top-up is now worth double the standard allowance at more than £400 a month. And in 2017, they took away extra financial help for the group of people who could prepare for work. So we're left with a binary assessment of can or can't work and a clear financial incentive to define yourself as incapable of work, something the OBR, IFS and others say is a likely factor driving people onto incapacity benefits. Today, we tackle this problem head-on. We will legislate to rebalance the payments in universal credit from April next year, holding the value of the health top-up fixed in cash terms for existing claimants and reducing it for new claimants, with an additional premium for people with severe lifelong conditions that mean that they will never work, to give them the financial security they deserve. Yeah. And alongside this, Mr. Speaker, we will bring in a permanent, above-inflation rise to the standard allowance in universal credit for the first time ever. Yeah. A £775 annual increase in cash terms by 2029-30, and a decisive step to tackle the perverse incentives in the system. We will also fix the failing system of reassessments. The Conservatives failed to switch reassessments back on after the pandemic. So they're down by more than 2/3, with face-to-face assessments going from 7 in 10 to only 1 in 10. We will turn these reassessments back on at scale and shift the focus back to doing more face-to-face. And we will ensure they are recorded as standard to give confidence to claimants and taxpayers that they're being done properly. And, Mr. Speaker, I can also announce for people on universal credit with the most severe disabilities and health conditions that will never improve, we want to ensure that they are never reassessed to give them the confidence and dignity they deserve. And we will fundamentally overhaul the DWP's safeguarding approach to make sure all our processes and training are of the highest quality so we protect and support the most vulnerable people. Mr. Speaker, alongside these changes, we will also reform disability benefits so they focus support on those in greatest need and to ensure the social security system lasts for the long term into the future. Social and demographic change means more people are now living with a disability. But the increase in disability benefits is double the rate of increasing prevalence of working age disability in the country, with claims amongst young people up 150%, for mental health conditions up 190%, and claims for learning difficulties up over 400%, according to the IFS. Every day, there are more than 1,000 new PIP awards. That's the equivalent of adding a population the size of Leicester every single year. Mr. Speaker, that is not sustainable long term, above all for the people who depend on this support. But the Tories have no proper plan to deal with this, just yet more ill-thought-through consultations. So today I can announce this government will not bring in the Tory proposals for vouchers, because disabled people should have choice and control over their lives. We will not means test PIP, because disabled people deserve extra support, whatever their incomes. And, Mr. Speaker, I can confirm we will not freeze PIP either. Instead, our reforms will focus support on those with the greatest needs. We will legislate for a change in PIP so people will need to score a minimum of 4 points in at least one activity to qualify for the daily living element of PIP from November 2026. This will not affect the mobility component of PIP and only relates to the daily living element. And alongside this, we will launch a review of the PIP assessment, led by my right honourable friend, the Minister for Social Security and Disability, in close consultation with disabled people, the organisations that represent them, and other experts. So we make sure PIP and the assessment process is fit for purpose now and into the future. And, Mr. Speaker, this is a significant reform package that is expected to save over £5 billion in 2029-30, and the OBR will set out their final assessment of the costings next week. Our third and final objective is to deliver personalised support to sick and disabled people who can work to get the jobs they need and deserve. We know from the last Labour government and our new deals for disabled people, young people and the long-term unemployed, the difference that proper employment support can make. And more recent evidence from the Work Choice programme and additional work coach time shows support can make a significant difference in the number of people getting work, keeping work and improving their mental health and well-being too. This Labour government believes that an active state can transform people's lives. We know this because we have done it before. So today I can announce we will invest an additional £1 billion a year for employment support with the aim of guaranteeing high-quality, tailored and personalised support to help people on a pathway to work. The largest ever investment in opportunities to work for sick and disabled people. And alongside this, for those on the UC Health top-up, we will bring in an expectation to engage and a new support conversation to talk about people's goals and aspirations, combined with an offer of personalised health skills and employment support. And because being out of work or training when you're young is so damaging for your future prospects, we will go further. In addition to funding our youth guarantee through the £240 million Get Britain working plan, we will consult on delaying access to the health top-up in universal credit until someone is aged 22, with the savings reinvested into work support and training opportunities, so every young person is earning or learning and on a pathway to success. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives left a broken benefit system that's failing the people who depend on it and our country as a whole. The status quo is unacceptable, but it is not inevitable. We were elected on a mandate for change, to end the sticking plaster approach and tackle the root causes of problems in this country that have been ignored for too long. Because we believe in the value and potential of every single person, that we all have something positive to contribute and can make a difference, whether that's in paid work, in our families or communities, alongside our neighbours and friends. We will unleash this potential in every corner of the land, because we are as ambitious for the British people as they are for themselves. Today we take decisive action, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State Helen Whately.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Right Honourable Lady for advance sight of her statement. She and I agree on one thing. The welfare bill is too high. Left unchecked, it will rise to £100 billion by the end of the decade. Spending more on sickness benefits than we do on defence is not the sign of a strong country. And this isn't just a question of money. We have 3 million working-age people not working due to ill health, not filling the roles businesses need, not contributing to our economy, not fulfilling their own potential. Now, the best way to get the welfare bill down is to get people off benefits and into work. That is what we did year after year after taking office in 2010. Despite the once-in-a-century pandemic, there were 4 million more people in employment when we left office than the mess we inherited from Labour. Before the pandemic, economic inactivity was at a historic low. But it's true that then we started to see a new phenomenon: growing numbers of people claiming sickness benefits, and particularly worryingly, young people. A system set up with good intentions to protect the most vulnerable in society had over time morphed into something broader, driven in part by a well-intentioned but not always helpful medicalisation of life's ups and downs. In government, we identified this problem. We worked up plans to tackle it, but at every point, Labour opposed them. In fact, the Chancellor said that not one single penny could be saved from benefits. So when they came into office, not only did they cancel or delay pretty much everything we handed over, they had no plans of their own. They walked into the department with empty notebooks. All they'd done in opposition is oppose, instead of the hard work of coming up with their own answers. That's why the country has had to wait another 8 months for this announcement. And in that time, taxpayers have shelled out £7 billion in extra sickness benefits. Nearly 500,000 people have been signed off sick. In fact, 60 people were signed onto sickness benefits while the Right Honourable Lady was talking. Nonetheless, I have been looking forward to hearing what she would announce today, and which of the many things briefed out to the media her spinning policy wheel would eventually land on. Governing is hard. We know that. In the last few weeks, they have made it look really hard. But nothing compared to how hard life can be for a severely disabled person. Somebody for whom getting up, getting dressed, getting breakfast, things most of us here found easy to do this morning, they find hard, if not impossible. For some people, the last few weeks has been deeply frightening. They will be glad for the uncertainty to finally be at an end. Mr. Speaker, I can genuinely say that I want the Right Honourable Lady to succeed, and I welcome her commitment today to increase the number of reassessments and that more of these will be taking place face-to-face and recorded. I welcome the investment in employment support for disabled people. And of course, I welcome her re-announcing a host of things that we were doing in government. Scrapping the work capability assessment and creating a single assessment. That is already government policy, due to come in 2026-27. Her big idea seems to be to delay this until 2028. Merging New Style JSA and ESA into a new time-limited higher rate, a proposal we worked up in government. Tightening up eligibility for PIP, a consultation we launched, and by the way, would have gone much further on. Ending reassessments of people whose health conditions won't improve, we consulted on. Their right to try guarantee sounds remarkably similar to our chance to work guarantee. And of course, her continued support for Workwell, a programme I launched with the now Shadow Chancellor. In fact, the only original idea I can see in their entire announcement is increasing the rate of unemployment benefits, a Labour policy if ever I heard one. Mr. Speaker, this is a now or never chance to seize the moment, a now or never for millions of people who will otherwise be signed off for what could end up being a lifetime on benefits. But this announcement today leaves me with more questions than answers. How many people will this help back into work? By when? Surely we haven't been waiting 8 months just for another green paper. Where is the fit note reform crucial to stem the flow of people onto benefits? Where is the action on people being signed off sick for the everyday ups and downs of life? Why is she only planning to save $5 billion when the bill is forecast to rise to over $100 billion? And do the savings she's announcing today include the $5 billion savings we had already agreed with the OBR for reforming the work capability assessment? Because if so, she has made virtually no savings of her own. What is the saving net of the additional expenditure planned? Fundamentally, this is too little, too late. The fact is, $5 billion. The fact is, $5 billion just doesn't cut it with a bill so big going up so fast. She needed to be tougher. She should be saying, no more hard-working taxpayers funding the family next door not to work. No more free top-of-the-range cars for people who don't need them. No more sickfluencers helping people to claim money they don't need. And now, before the Right Honourable Lady puts on her angry voice and leans across the dispatch box to shout at me about 14 years, can I gently say to her that everybody in this chamber and around the country knows that we lost and they won, and now her job is to govern, and it is my job to hold her to account. Our country needs everybody who can work to work. This principle should be at the heart of our welfare system. It is good for the taxpayer, good for the economy, good for the individual and their family who benefit from the security, dignity and purpose that work brings. And it means that those who genuinely cannot work get the support they deserve. But the fact is, fewer people work under Labour. It's happened every time they've been in office, and it's already happening now. They should have taken their time in opposition to come up with some meaningful reforms. They didn't, and the country is already paying the price.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I mean, I personally like the Honourable Lady a great deal, but her entire response seemed to be railing against her own party's failings and lamenting action her party itself failed to take. Too little, too late, it indeed will be the epitaph of the Conservative Party. One thing I do agree with is that this is a now or never moment, and I'm proud that this government is taking it, taking decisive action, ducking the challenges that have been ignored for too long. And also, I would say, Mr. Speaker, I'm not interested in being tough. This is about real people with real lives, and we have to be careful how we talk about this. I'm interested in taking the right steps to actually change the system, to transform people's lives, and crucially, to ensure that we have a social security system that lasts in future. 1 in 3 of us will have a health condition in our lifetimes. 1 in 4 of us is disabled. And unless we as a country in the welfare state, the world of work and all of our public service wake up to that fact, that welfare state that the Labour Party created will not be there for future generations, as that is what we are determined to secure. This is a substantial package of measures that will save around £5 billion by 2930. We will have to wait till the OBR comes up with its final costings on all of this at the spring statement. But I would just leave honourable members with this. The former Chancellor George Osborne said a decade ago, governments let unemployed people get parked on disability benefits and told they would never work again. Why? Because people on disability benefits don't get counted in unemployment figures that could embarrass politicians. The Labour Party isn't embarrassed about this situation. We're ashamed of the state the Tories left the country in. We will face up to our responsibilities. It's time honourable members opposite did the same.
Chair of the Select Committee, Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for her statement. I absolutely agree. Our social security system isn't fit for purpose, and I think the measures, particularly in terms of increasing employment support by £1 billion a year, by increasing the standard allowance of universal credit, something unfortunately the opposition failed to do when they were in government, will be really, really positively felt. I also appreciate the difficult financial circumstances we face ourselves, and in spite of the £5 billion being said by the party opposite to be a huge figure, it's actually the largest cut in social security support since 2015. And I would put that there are alternative, more compassionate ways to balance the books rather than on the back of sick and disabled people. I absolutely fundamentally believe that my right honourable friend is on the right course, and I implore my party to try and get our reforms to bed in first before we look to making the cuts, a point that others have also made. There's so much evidence of the adverse effects that the party opposite had with the cuts in support and the restrictions in eligibility criteria when they were in government, including the deaths of vulnerable people. And we can't have a repeat of that. So I would be grateful if my honourable friend could, as a matter of urgency, publish the analysis that they've had on the impacts, particularly on mental health impacts, and also to give an outline of when we are expected to respond. Thank you.
I really thank my honourable friend for her response. Let me say straight off, we will be publishing the equality impact analysis and the poverty analysis alongside the spring statement. I know that she is a lifelong champion for sick and disabled people and has rightly raised concerns, including through the Select Committee, on vital issues like safeguarding, and I look forward to receiving the Select Committee's report on that to learn from the evidence they've received. I would just say that although this package is a substantial package with those estimated savings, spending on working age, sickness and disability benefits will continue to rise over this Parliament. The last forecast was that it would continue to rise by £18 billion. It is not a cut, as the Honourable lady has said. These are really important issues. We need to work to get this right, to make sure the proper support is in place for people, and I really do genuinely look forward to working with the Select Committee to get all these proposals right.
Steve Darling, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would first of all like to start by thanking the Secretary of State for sharing her statement in advance. That was extremely welcome. Liberal Democrats want to see more people in work, including those with disabilities. Sadly, the significant blocker for those people getting into work is the appalling state of our health and social care system left behind by the Tories to my right in more ways than one. And we desperately need the new Labour government to drive forward with reforms that actually see an investment in our health service to improve it. The devil is in the detail of these proposals, and I do fear what we will find as we turn over rocks over the next few days, particularly for those who are most vulnerable. The Minister has described the system as a broken system, and so, therefore, I would like to ask the Minister, how are you driving... Sorry, Chair. How is the Minister driving significant change through this? I fear that this is just tinkering around the edges where we need to see real culture change within the DWP. And also, Mr. Chair, investment in our NHS is absolutely more essential.
Secretary of State.
I actually agree with the honourable gentleman. We do need extra investment in the NHS and to overhaul the culture of the DWP, and that is precisely what we are doing. We are investing an additional £26 billion into the NHS, an extra £172 million into the Disabled Facilities Grant to help disabled people live independently, £3.7 billion into social care, because that's such an important issue. We do need a decisive cultural shift in the DWP. That's why our Get Britain working plans have announced proposals to overhaul job centres. And we've also said today we need to have a fundamental look at our safeguarding approach. And I would also say this, our Pathways to Work employment support programme genuinely is that. Because for some people, getting out of the house is an achievement. For others, going along to a community group, maybe doing voluntary action, getting skills, that is what we mean. And we will work closely, not only with the NHS and my right honourable friend and social care, but also voluntary organisations who have such a vital role to help people on a pathway to success.
Dave McHillier.
Mr. Speaker, and I welcome my right honourable friend's commitment to making sure that no one is on the scrap heap when it comes to working, that everyone will get the support that they need. I note that she's consulting on delaying access to the health top-up in universal credit until someone is aged 22, and would be grateful if she could explain the rationale for that age and what savings she expects to make if that consultation goes forward.
Secretary of State.
My right honourable friend raises a really important issue. I would say on that, honourable members, I mean, patience is not my greatest virtue, but honourable members will need to wait until the OBR's full assessment of individual measures and the savings that they make for the spring statement. And also on the delaying access to the health top-up for those under 22, there will be a specific exemption for those who are never able to work because their disability is so severe. But this is all about matching it with our youth guarantee, announced in the Get Britain working plan, to make sure every young person is earning or learning. Because if you are not in education, employment or training when you are young, the impact can be lifelong and scarring for your health, job prospects and earnings. And so we have got to put that right.
Esther McVeigh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How precisely will these benefit cuts be realised, given this government's anti-business budget, which has seen businesses close at the fastest rate since Labour was last in office, and of those still standing, 30% are planning to cut staff to cope with the increase in the employer's national insurance contribution? Where are the jobs? We know Labour is the party of the magic money tree. Is Labour now the party of the magic jobs tree too?
I mean, the only party that believes in magic money is members opposite. Who wrote a cheque that they couldn't pay. And I would say to the Honourable Lady, unlike members opposite, we believe good work and good rights at work actually is of benefit to businesses, because the best businesses know it helps retain people and reduce the costs of recruitment. We are overhauling our approach with employers in the DWP because only 1 in 6 ever uses a job centre to recruit. We want to have a single account manager for all businesses. We're going to make sure our job centres are much more embedded in their local communities so they have detailed knowledge of individual employers. That is the way that we get Britain working and growing again.
Clive Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Minister, when they made the decision, to go down this route, did they understand the pain and difficulty that this will cause millions of people, millions of our constituents who are using food banks, who are using social supermarkets, people who are on the brink? This £5 billion cut is going to impact them more than I think her department is giving credit for. And I would like her department to be able to look my constituents in the eye when I go back to them to tell them that this is going to work for them, because as things stand, my constituents, my friends, my family are very angry about this, and they do not think this is the kind of action that a Labour government takes.
I have great respect for my honourable friend, but let me just say this to him. I've spent years chairing Feeding Leicester, the programme to end hunger in my city. And I know that I can look my constituents in the eye and say to them, I know that getting more people into better paid jobs is the key to their future success. I know dealing with their mental health problems, which we know are so prevalent, is absolutely essential. We, the Labour Party, believe that if you can work, we will give you the help to get back on your feet, because that is the long-term route to tackling poverty, tackling inequality, which is what this Labour Party is all about.
Caroline Day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Like the Honourable Lady, I was also elected in 2010, and I need to tell her that our recollections differ. Because when I came into this role after 13 years of Labour government, 7.5% of the young people in the Gosport constituency were not in education, employment or training. That was a number that was down to 3% by last year. And since they've taken office, 83,000 more people across this country of working age are now unemployed. So what I want to know from her is all the jobs that take on so many of the young people across our constituencies, from adult social care to childcare to hair and beauty, are telling me that they're not now taking on more staff as a result of her Chancellor's changes to national insurance contributions. Surely the two are mutually incompatible.
Secretary of State.
I would say to the Honourable Lady, unless we cut waiting times and waiting lists in the NHS so people can get back to health and back to work. That is the reason that we are investing an extra £26 billion into the NHS, and many employers have said to me that they are deeply concerned about that. And we are precisely dealing with those key sectors, health and social care, construction, all those areas where people want people with the skills to get jobs. We are overhauling our approach in DWP, setting up sector work-based academy programmes specifically tailored to employers' needs. I know there's more we need to do to work with employers to help them get people back into work, and that is what this government will deliver.
Dr. Marie-Timble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years of Conservative failure, there's a 29% employment gap and a 17% pay gap for disabled people in this country. Therefore, we must ensure that the social model of disability is central to government decision-making to achieve inclusive growth that enables disabled people to fulfil their potential. I welcome her proactive approach to reasonable adjustments and the £1 billion support package to get disabled people back into work where they can work, as well as her recognition that PIP is designed as an in-work benefit to enable people to live independently, because research shows that supportive, incentive-based approaches massively outperform cuts or sanctions in getting disabled people into sustainable employment. What work has she done to develop inclusive growth strategies across all employment sectors to close the disability employment gap and the disability pay gaps?
Sarah State.
I absolutely agree with my right honourable friend. This is at the heart of our mission here, providing those equal rights and choices for disabled people to work as anybody else. We will be working with disabled people and the organisations that represent them to develop our pathways to work employment support so we get it right, because we won't do that unless we work closely with disabled people. And we are also working right across government. We have disability ministers in every single government department. They are driving this agenda forward, and I know that my right honourable friend will give much valued advice and help to make sure we get it right in every part of this government.
John Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Encouraging and enabling people back to work is a laudable aim, but how can the Minister assume $5 billion worth of success in advance of actually rolling out the programme? Surely the right approach is to let the reforms generate savings naturally by a concrete reduction in need, rather than to set an arbitrary target beforehand.
We're not setting an arbitrary target. We're fixing a broken system, and we're taking action immediately, because we believe we have to both put in place that employment support, put in place the health support and social care support at the same time as fixing a broken benefit system. And I would just say to the honourable gentleman, I start first, last and always with people. What do we need to do to give people the opportunities they deserve if they can work? What do we need to do to make sure the social security system lasts in future? That is something that we cannot put off any longer, because that is not good enough for the people that we were elected to serve.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. PIP is a devolved benefit known as the Adult Disability Payment in Scotland. Can my right honourable friend assure me that she'll be working with partners, including the Scottish Government, to ensure that disabled people right across the whole of the UK get the support that they need?
Sarah State.
Absolutely, that is very important for me personally and the government as a whole, because we want people in Scotland to have the same chances and choices to work if they can do as everybody else, and to make sure people have proper protections. That is essential for us, and I will continue to work closely with the Scottish Government, not just in my own area, but I know across the board in other government departments too.
Mark Pritchard.
Speaker. Youth unemployment stood at 642,000 as of the last quarter of 2024, a rise of 136,000 on 2023, and a youth unemployment rate of 14.8%. She mentions earlier in her statement, earn and learn. Does she agree with me that one way of perhaps attracting some people back into work is for her to have discussions with her colleague in the Ministry of Defence, the Defence Secretary? And would she agree with me that getting more young people into His Majesty's Armed Forces, Air Force, Navy, Army, would be a starting place?
I absolutely agree with the honourable gentleman. Indeed, before I was appointed to this position in opposition as a constituency MP, I have discussed with my local job centre and the Armed Forces recruitment precisely these issues, because of the really exciting careers and opportunities that are available, I think are really important for young people in my constituency and the one that he represents. And I will certainly be having more conversations with colleagues in the Ministry of Defence to make sure we put this plan into action.
Clive Efford.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard many people make a moral case for the changes that my right honourable friend has announced today. But does she agree that over the last 20 years, those people with large amounts of wealth have done extremely well, whilst average household incomes have stagnated and the standard of living for the overwhelming majority has gone down? So whilst we make a moral case for changes to the benefit system, shouldn't we also be making a case for how we tax wealth as opposed to income?
My honourable friend is right that those with the broadest shoulders should bear the biggest burden, and that's why I'm very proud that we have tackled issues like closing loopholes in the non-dom tax status, why we've looked at the profits of the energy companies and many other areas. I think that is an absolute principle of this Labour Party of fairness in the tax system.
Stephen Flynn.
They say they won't change their fiscal rules because of their manifesto. They say they won't change their tax policies because of their manifesto. They say they won't change their position in relation to the single market because of their manifesto. Perhaps the Secretary of State could outline to me and to people right across the UK where in her manifesto it stated that they were going to take £5 billion away from disabled people.
I'm very happy to send a highlighted version of our manifesto to the honourable gentleman, where we said we would reform or replace the WCA. We said we'd make sure we dealt with backlogs in access to work. We said we'd make work pay. We said we'd invest more in the NHS. We said we'd improve employment rights. We said we'd create jobs in every part of the country. I'm very proud we're delivering on it. I just ask the honourable gentleman to take a look at what's happening in Scotland and their record there, because there's probably more they could do.
Jill German.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted to hear my right honourable friend announce additional investment for high-quality, tailored and personalised support to help people on a pathway to work, and the recognition that for so many it is indeed a pathway and not just a series of referrals that just lead back to square one. So can my right honourable friend assure me that joint working with local support services like those in Clwyd North, already doing great work, will form part of this so a truly local, person-centred approach can be achieved?
Yes. We won't get this right unless we draw on the huge strengths of our voluntary and community organisations. You know, I have never believed that there are hard-to-reach groups. It's just we need to change what we do. And I think there's a lot we can learn from groups like the one my honourable friend suggests, because it really is a pathway to work. I think we've got to end this false divide between those who can and can't work and understand that there are steps towards a better life, and that's what this government wants to deliver.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two practical questions. She said she's joining Job Seekers Allowance and Employment Support Allowance into a new time-limited unemployment insurance. What is that time limit? And second of all, she said an expectation on people to look for work. What happens when they don't meet that expectation, and what discipline is faced if they don't take that up?
The time limit is one of the things we're consulting on in the Green Paper, and I look forward to hearing his views about that. And in terms of the expectation to engage, it's actually very interesting when we have started to free up our work coach time, actually offer support on the phone, in person. Many people have come forward because we're trying to change the culture of that. Actually, I mean, the Conservatives always leap straight to a position where people refuse to get involved. Actually, we've got to change the culture. And I believe that is the way that we would get more people onto that pathway to success.
Lawrence Eshelin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the Secretary of State that many disabled and sick people want to work, but the reality is cutting PIP will not address the reasons why they don't. The Secretary of State outlined the reasonable adjustment framework for disabled people is hard. It's very hard to navigate. It took me 6 months to navigate that for my member of staff in the place where we legislate. So how hard is it going to be for disabled people in the workplace to try to get those employees to make those adjustments? Can the Secretary of State outline how she's going to make sure that the workplace is ready for people accessing the workplace, and that disabled gap employment, which really, in a sense, doesn't have anything to do with benefits, but some of the reasonable adjustments that we see not happening at the moment?
I know my honourable friend is an absolute passionate advocate of these issues, and she's right. We have to do far more to work with employers to ensure that those basic reasonable adjustments need to be made. That is one of the issues that Sir Charlie Mayfield is looking at in our Keep Britain Working review, precisely because we know good employers understand the need to make these changes. I am very happy to meet with my honourable friend to go through this in more detail, because she's right, we've got to get this absolutely nailed.
Gavin Robinson.
First it was the pensioners and their winter fuel allowance, then it was the waspy women and broken promises, and now it's the sick and the vulnerable. We believe in protecting the taxpayer, but protecting those who need our support the most, and yet not a word about abuse or not a word about those who are taking money out of the system when they are not entitled to it. Can I ask the Secretary of State how she can rationalise in her mind in this statement how she on the one hand accepts that people's health and their well-being can fluctuate, but on the other hand say that she's going to do away with the accumulation of points. To require an applicant to get 4 points in any one box does away with the ability to recognise that mental ill health particularly manifests itself in many different ways, and that accumulation of points has been incredibly important to get support for those who need it most. If it fluctuates, how is she doing away with that accumulation?
I would say to the honourable gentleman, there is very clear evidence that good work is good for mental health. And that is for people with anxiety and depression, but also those with more severe conditions, psychosis, schizophrenia. Really clear evidence from the NHS individual placement and support programme that you can help people get into work. That's not only better for them and their incomes, but it reduces their relapses and spending on the NHS. He asks me how I rationalise this. It's because I am not prepared to accept a system that is miserable for people, that traps them in poverty, that denies people the chances and support they deserve. And I am also not prepared to accept an inexorable rise in the cost of spending, much of which is on the cost of failure, precisely because I want to ensure the social security system lasts for the long term.
Sarah Owen.
Mr. Speaker, I think all of us on this side of the House at least understand the scale of the financial bin fire left by the previous government. But there are those that are worried and are seeking assurances at home. Of the 1 million people potentially losing disability support, what guarantees can my right honourable friend give that those that are unable to feed or toilet themselves will not lose out in personal care? And of the 1 million who can and do want to work, of course we welcome that £1 billion extra support. But how is this government going to hold uncooperative employers' feet to the fire in giving disabled people an equal chance of employment and career success?
Thursday.
I agree with my honourable friend. I know people are worried and concerned. And that is a really important issue. It's why I disagreed with the opposition spokesman saying we need to be tough. I'm not interested in that. This is real people and real lives. And I would say that the changes in PIP are not coming in immediately. They will be from November 2026 for new claimants. Those with severe conditions who will never work will be protected. If people do have a reassessment, it will be done by a fully trained assessor or a healthcare professional based on their individual needs. And in order to ensure there is greater confidence in those assessors and the decisions that are being taken, we will overhaul our safeguarding and training, and we will record those assessments as a standard, because that is absolutely essential.
So Desmond Sway.
Speaker, because working is so beneficial to mental health, will she require claimants to undertake socially useful work in order to retain their benefits?
Sarah State.
No.
Gives you the flexibility. There's only a few. Neil Coyle.
Can I thank the Secretary of State for listening to disabled people and their organisations on ending the needless, wasteful and extremely expensive repeat reassessments for those with progressive conditions. I hope it's being welcomed by those who've campaigned for that for many years. But can I ask if the Green Paper plans will include tackling the disincentives to work for disabled people and others in supported housing that mean working more than 15 hours a week can actually result in financial penalties in a system not just ignored by the party opposite, but put in place by the two parties opposite in coalition when they fumbled the universal credit introduction? Will this government fix those tax allowances to ensure that work always pays, including for disabled people in supported housing?
My right honourable friend, the Minister for Social Security and Disability, is looking at that, and I am sure he will discuss these issues with my honourable friend if he would like that.
John Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've heard nothing today that shows the government has yet listened to disabled people. Any changes to PIP should have been co-produced, but we have this week 25 disabled people's groups and charities writing to ministers begging to be included and not as an afterthought. Can the Secretary of State explain why disabled people are feeling so disregarded and scapegoated, and why impoverishing them to the tune of £5 billion is a higher priority than a simple wealth tax?
Hear, hear.
Secretary of State.
I mean, I think many disabled people did feel disregarded and ignored under the Conservative government. And I would say to her that on many, not all, but many aspects of what I've announced today, we will be working with disabled people and the organisations that represent them. And if she has particular issues and concerns that she would like to raise, I would be very, very happy to her if she would like to write for me or meet myself or the Minister for Social Security and Disability.
Mike Donald.
Mr. Speaker, you know that there are decisions made in this House that stay with you for the rest of your life. This is one of them. Can I say to the Secretary of State, we all agree with their objectives of trying to ensure that disabled people are fully have the resources to have a decent quality of life, and that those capable of work have the support to get them into work. But the reality is trying to find up to £5 billion worth of cuts by changing the PIP rules, the criteria, will result in immense suffering, and we've seen it in the past, loss of life. So what monitoring, independent monitoring, will take place that will be reported to this House, and what threshold of suffering will it take to take an alternative route to supporting disabled people?
I would say to my honourable friend, I take very seriously the issues that I've announced today. We absolutely want to make sure that all of the assessment processes and training are properly scrutinised, and we are overhauling our safeguarding processes. But let me just say this. My objective is to improve the lives and life chances of sick and disabled people, for those who can work, to support them to get into work, for those who will never work, to protect them, switching off the reassessments that have been done to give them dignity and respect. And I believe that that mission, not only to ensure those who can work do work, but to secure the sustainability of the social security for the long term, is precisely the responsibility of a Labour Party that founded the welfare state.
Dame Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of the first acts of her government was to take away the winter fuel allowance from millions of pensioners on incomes as low as £13,000 a year, including 44,000 who are terminally ill or were. So can she reassure all our constituents that in making these changes, she will not be going after those who have a terminal illness?
That is absolutely essential for me personally and for the government as a whole, and I do give that assurance to the honourable lady. But I would just gently say to her, you know, under the Conservatives, pensioner poverty increased, and they left 880,000 pensioners not getting the pension credit they deserve. They are suddenly converted to caring about pensioners on low incomes. In contrast, we've decided to act.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a physio, I know that optimising somebody's function and independence in work or not in work saves the system so much money because it prevents dependency. However, I find that incongruous with the cut of £5 billion and also changing the eligibility criteria. So will she ensure that before those precise measures are brought before the House, that disabled people are consulted and involved in that decision-making process, but also that we ensure that people maintain their independence, their psychological safety, their dignity, and aren't pushed further into poverty?
Secretary of State.
I would say to the honourable lady, I absolutely agree that keeping older people as physically independent for as long as possible is vital. That is one of the reasons why we're investing £26 billion extra into the NHS. We're also rolling out employment advisors, not only in talking therapies and mental health services, but starting that in physical health too, including for people with musculoskeletal conditions, because I think getting people back to health and back to work is so important. We will be legislating on the PIP changes. There will be full ability for this House to debate those changes, and we will be consulting with disabled people, crucially, on the employment support programme, how we get that right, and how we make sure that is much more joined up with the health support that many disabled people, sick and disabled people need.
Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of my Hazel Grove constituents are keen as mustard to get back to work, but they are waiting for either a diagnosis or treatment on the NHS. This is made more difficult by capital spending needed at Stepping Hill Hospital, and also the fact that mental health services across Greater Manchester are stretched too thinly. What assurance can the Secretary of State give these constituents that her announcements today are not going to make more difficult an already really difficult time of their lives?
Mary Rimmer.
I mean, she's absolutely right to champion the needs of... Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. She's absolutely right to champion her constituents' needs and to say many people... In fact, we recently did a survey of people on sickness and disability benefits, and 2 in 5 of them all said they were on a waiting list. And that is really concerning to us, which is why we are putting that extra investment in place. We need to go further and faster on driving those waiting lists down, but we have already achieved those 2 million extra appointments that we said we'd deliver in our manifesto 7 months early, and we will do even more to make sure her constituents get back to health and back to work.
Mary Rimmer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Nearly 1 million young people are leaving school and not in employment and training or education. My colleague and I, both representing St Helens, received a letter a couple of weeks ago, and it came a message from tutors in the college who were having difficulty getting young people to join training, education, and could we do anything about it? Could the Minister say a little more about a guarantee for employment for young people and how we're going to get them to accept training? They were afraid of a cut in universal credit. I have to admit, I didn't know young people were on universal credit.
I promised I will keep my answers shorter because I know there are so many colleagues who want to get in. Actually, our youth guarantee is going to start being rolled out from next month. It will bring together, local leaders, mayors and local leaders will bring together all that work, health and skills support locally. I'm very happy to talk to her personally about what more we can do in her constituency, because she's right. We've got to get those young people on a pathway to success.
Jerome Mayhew.
Mr. Speaker, when I fought the last election, I was honest with my electorate, telling them that we would save £12 billion from the welfare budget. Was the Minister honest with her electorate when she talked about their plans to cut disability welfare, or is she making this policy on the hoof because the Chancellor has destroyed economic growth?
They didn't have a plan. The former Chancellor, the member for Godalming and Ash, actually admitted during the general election that money had already been scored. So I'd say I will listen more to the honourable member when they actually put forward a plan that works instead of having it discredited in the courts.
Dan Francis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Too many carers of disabled people end up with physical and mental health disabilities themselves and end up trapped in the system of their loved one. What more can the Secretary of State do with her colleagues in the Department of Health and Department of Education to stop that trap?
Secretary of State.
I've been a lifelong champion of family carers who give their all to looking after the people they love. My honourable friend will know we've already boosted the carers allowance earning threshold by £45 a week to £196, benefiting more than 60,000 carers by 29/30, the biggest ever cash increase in the earnings threshold for carers. There's much more we need to do to support family carers, including them, enabling them to balance their work and caring responsibilities.